Thank you for joining in. Today we're going to be doing a live Q&A from questions that I have received over the last few days. And I love these questions because they are very common questions that I am asked likely on a daily basis, if not a weekly basis. So hopefully my answers will not only help the people who ask the questions, but they will also help other listeners that are tuning in. So I have my questions over here. So if I'm looking down in this direction, I'm just looking for the next question. So our first question is from Michelle, and she says, any hope or tricks for numb hands and feet? This is a great question. And my answer is yes, there absolutely is something that you can do. And I should also say it depends on what is causing the numbness or tingling or burning or pins and needles. There's a lot of different things that can cause abnormal sensations. And in this case, it's numbness. So if it's caused by the MS, versus if it's caused from something that you're doing. So if it's something that you're doing, like a position that you're sitting in or an activity that you're participating in, likely just stop doing that activity and it should lessen. However, when it's from MS and when it is due to the misfiring of your sensory neural pathways, there's an exercise that you can actually do. So the most common one is where you get a big bowl or a bucket of rice and you put your hand in the rice and move your hand around and make sure it's deep enough where your whole hand is in the rice, if not even up to your forearm. And you're just moving it around in the rice. You're picking it up, you're putting it down. Sometimes people will use rice as well as dried beans or dried lentils, just for different textures. And the idea is that you are desensitizing your hand. You can do the same thing for your feet. Get a big bucket and put a bunch of dried rice and beans in it and put your foot in it. And again, just move your foot around, move your toes, move your ankle, go up and down, in and out, round in circles. And again, you're desensitizing those sensory pathways that go to your hand or that go to your foot. If you don't have a bunch of dried rice hanging around, you literally can use anything. I'm just looking around at my desk right now, and one thing that I have is a pen. So if I wanted, let's say this is the hand that has sensory issues, I could use this part of the pen that is nice and soft and shiny and just touch a pen to my hand. And I'm just rubbing. I could also do some tapping to the areas that are numb or burning or tingling or pins and needles. And then once that doesn't produce as much numbness or as much of the undesirable sensation that you're feeling, then go on to something else. So maybe that pen right here was fine. So now I might go to this diamond part that's a little bit rougher. And I would do the same thing where I'm just moving it around, tapping. Eventually, that won't feel numb or whatever that undesired sensation is, won't feel that way. So move on to something else. I happen to have this card right here. Love these cards. Again, I could use this sharp edge and just kind of tap around, poke. So you get the idea, but you use things, just common things that you have around your home to help reduce the sensation. It's called desensitization, and you can do it for your hands, your arms, your feet. So I hope that exercise helps. And you generally want to use something that is the least noxious at first, meaning something that is least likely to cause your numbness to increase. So for some people, that might be a t-shirt or a cotton ball, and then you advance from there. And you'd want to do it for maybe about 5 minutes or so per item. So this might take anywhere from 5 minutes if you're just using one item up to maybe 30 minutes if you're going through a couple of different ones. On average, people see improvements from during that session. While you're doing it, you'll feel that sensation lessen, but other times it's not for a couple of days or even a week or so later. So great question, Michelle. Next question, any idea about what is best when you have bad spasm days and nights? Is exercise better or worse? My answer to this is it's different for everyone, and it's best to see what works for you. So when you are having bad spasm days, I would recommend try just resting. See if that changes it at all. Do you feel better when you rest? If not, on those bad spasm days, try stretching those specific muscle groups. And if that helps, great, keep up with that. If that doesn't help, then try strengthening exercises and then reassess. Did that help at all? If not, try balance exercises. There's so many different types of exercise that you can do. So try one thing and only one thing, and then evaluate, okay, did that help? Did it make it worse? Did it not affect it at all? And then try something else. So it's a lot of trial and error, figuring out what works for you. For some people on those days, rest is best. Just lay down or sit down, don't do anything. Also keep in mind though, especially this time of year, keep in mind heat intolerance. Your spasms might be worse because your core temperature is rising, or it's hot outside, or anything that can cause your core temperature to rise. So keep that in mind too. And I just want to make a note as well that when you are trying to loosen muscles, stretching is one thing, but massage is another. Just self-massage with your hands, just trying to massage a muscle out. Foam rolling, or using a stick like this. And that's something that can help roll your muscles out with that type of device. So there's lots of different ways to help reduce muscle spasms just by stretching, if you find that strengthening and balance didn't do anything for your spasms. So I hope that helps. Joe says, is there any medications really helpful for MS people? So there are a lot of medications out there, and MS or not, everyone's body responds differently. So yes, I mean, aside from disease modifying therapy, which is its own classification specifically meant for slowing the progression of MS and reducing the likelihood of more lesions and more relapses, there are symptom management medications, but everyone responds differently. So there's no way I'd be able to say this one drug works best for all people with MS. So again, unfortunately, it does take a bit of trial and error. So talk to your neurologist, talk to all of your doctors on your healthcare team about what you're experiencing, and they might be able to have a best recommendation to start with for you. But great question. Cheryl has said, I've lived with progressive severe neuropathic pain in my feet for over 10 years and disabled for 8 years. The pain has made me basically immobile for the past year, and I've never been this weak. My feet are so tight, I don't even know where to start. So pain is actually very similar to that first question I answered about numbness, burning, tingling, pins and needles. So for pain, you can still use that desensitization exercise that I gave you. However, one thing that's interesting about the feet is that when the pain and or numbness or tingling starts, when you are in a standing position. So just getting your feet ready to bear your full body weight. So just practicing standing, and make sure that your feet don't become too uncomfortable or too painful. As soon as that's about to happen, sit down and let your feet rest, and then stand up again. And you're getting your feet used to your body weight so that you can then walk with less pain. So that's one idea. You also mentioned, I've never been this weak, and that your feet are so tight. So again, with tight feet, you can stretch the feet, you can roll with something like this or another roller, foam roller or something like that. You can roll your feet, you can stretch your feet, you can get a tennis ball and put that on the bottom of your feet. You can pull your toes back to stretch the bottom of your foot. So those are some ways that you can stretch the tightness. And as for strength in the feet, with your foot on the ground, you can practice lifting your toes, then down, then lift and then down, or spread, then close, spread, then close. So there's different ways that you can specifically strengthen your foot muscles. Now, obviously, there are lots and lots and lots of MS-specific leg strengthening exercises for walking. But as for the foot, which I think is what your question was asking, those would be my recommendations. Claire says, summer heat and fatigue is always a challenge for me. And Christy agreed that she loves being outside, but she has to hide away indoors with the AC on. One thing that I want to mention is about heat intolerance is the outdoor temperature, the heat, the humidity, 1000% can cause and likely will cause heat intolerance, but it's also anything that causes your core temperature to rise, meaning exercise can cause your core temperature to rise and therefore heat intolerance symptoms to rise, or stress and being overwhelmed and anxious. That is also something that can cause your core temperature to rise. Even if it's a cold day out, if you're bundled in blankets, that can make your core temperature to rise. So first and foremost, just be on the lookout for the other things that also cause your core temperature to rise. And I also want to point out, as Christy had mentioned, she has to hide away indoors in air conditioning. And for some people that works. It can be a very hot day outside, but if you're inside in air conditioning, you're fine. But for other people with MS, I can't tell you how many people, how many clients I've worked with that have said, oh my gosh, it's so hot outside. I'm inside in air conditioning and I still can feel it. So just know that if you're that person, you are not alone, and you still should be taking some measures, even though you're inside in air conditioning, to lessen your core temperature. So whether you want to stay outside in the heat or you're just staying inside in AC, but you still need to take more measures, my favorite tip is to sip, I just ran out of water, but sip ice cold water throughout the day. Just small sips, you don't have to chug it, but ice cold water to ingest something cold. Another thing that you can do is be proactive about wearing a cooling product. There's cooling wristbands, there's cooling hats, there's cooling t-shirts, there's cooling vests that go underneath your clothes so no one can tell you're wearing them. There's cooling necklaces. So there's lots and lots of different cooling products that I would recommend using before you even get hot. So if you know you're going to be going outside, even if it's just to get the mail, put something to cool yourself down on before you even go out. Or if you're inside in air conditioning, still put it on to make sure you're keeping your core temperature down. So heat intolerance looks so different for each person, but generally being proactive with cooling yourself down with ice cold water and other products is one of the best things that you can do. If your heat intolerance is perhaps additionally coming on from stress, something like meditation or doing an activity to reduce your stress can be very important as well. Okay, our next question is from Karen, who says, can you do squats every day or is it better to take a day off? And then actually the next question is from Diane, who says that she has difficulty doing squats. Are there any simple ways for the person who doesn't understand exercise or body movement like most humans? So the first part of that question was, is it okay to do squats every day? If you can do squats every day, and it doesn't make you sore, it doesn't prevent you from doing anything, then sure, do them daily. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't. I will say that generally, you should never do anything 7 days in a row. Your body does need rest. Your muscles actually build while you're resting, not while you're working them. So it is good to take at least 1 day, if not 2, off. But there's no, if you're not having any pain or extreme soreness or fatigue, then I wouldn't say that you'd have to take every other day off or anything like that. So I hope that helps for you, Karen. And for Diane, who's asking for simpler ways to do the squats. One of the easiest ways to do a squat when you have difficulty understanding positioning is stand up and have a sturdy chair behind you. And either it's a chair that will not move or you have it pushed up against a wall. So you're standing right in front of the chair, facing away from it. So the seat is behind you, and slowly sit down in the chair while trying to get your butt as far back in the chair as possible. So let me demonstrate. I'm just going to move my chair around. Hold on a second. I never use a chair with wheels. Okay. I have my cane and my leg lifter over here, so I'm just going to move those out of the way. Okay. So move this down. Okay, so the best way, you won't be able to see my head, but that's okay. The best way is to have this against a wall or something sturdy so that it won't tip over. You're standing in front, arms can be forward or reaching for armrests, and you're trying to sit down with the idea of having your butt as far back in the chair so that when you're sitting, you look like this and not this. This is very different. This is not that good for your knees. You want to end with your butt as far back as possible. So when you're standing, again, arms can be forward to help with balance or on the armrest, and just slowly sit, aiming to get your butt as far back as possible. And you just did a squat, and then stand up. Again, fully, and then when you sit down, try to get your butt as far back as possible. That's the best way that I can explain it without saying those specific things like keep your knees apart, knees behind your toes, make sure your core is tight. So that's what I'd suggest for that. And okay, next question is from Michael. What is a Pons device? How does it work and who can it help? So it's funny that you asked this, Michael. I just recorded a video for my Missing Link members. If you don't know what that is, it's my online MS wellness program. And each month we have a research update where I update everyone on something new that came out, whether it's a disease modifying therapy or in this case, Pons. So if you're a member of the Missing Link, that video is released this Wednesday. If you're not a member of the Missing Link, I'll give you just a general overview. And also there is information that you can find online. The Pons is an electrical stimulation, not too dissimilar from the walk aid or the bioness, but it's something that you put on your tongue, and it has a controller that you wear around your neck. So the controller sends a neural impulse or like an electrical stimulation to the mouthpiece, which is on your tongue, and the receptors on your tongue sense that, and they send a message, millions of messages and neural connections, neural impulses to your brain, specifically the parts of your brain that are responsible for balance and posture. And so you use that device in combination with physical therapy to help with walking, to help with your balance, to help with postural stability. And at this time, it's just used in conjunction with physical therapy. It's not a device that you can purchase and just walk home with, but that's a general concept of Pons. It was just FDA approved here in the US. I think it was last month, or maybe even this month. I think it was last month in June of 2021, but it's been FDA approved in Canada for over a year. All right, and then I have, I believe, 2 more questions. I see you guys are commenting. Let me find those other questions. Okay, so one question, one of our next ones is, what is the top exercise you should do every day to improve your walking? And this is from Karen, so great question, Karen. But my answer is one that unfortunately I don't think you'll like. There is no top exercise or best exercise for everyone because everyone's weakness is in different spots. So I understand why you're asking this question, but for example, if you have more weakness in your hip flexors than you do in your knee flexors, well, then you should do a hip flexor exercise for sure daily. But if your hip flexors aren't your weakest part, maybe it's your ankle or your toes or the knee or your core. There's different exercises based on where your weaknesses are. So ideally you should be doing all of them, but as far as a top exercise or a best exercise, I wouldn't even be able to begin to give you one because it's going to be different for each person. I can say that, as everyone watching this knows, multiple sclerosis is different for everyone. And even the same person can have different symptoms or different symptom severity in the same day, let alone each day within a week or a month or a year. So it is different for everyone. However, as a physical therapist and MS certified specialist, I have found that there are specific muscle groups that MS attacks. So There are specific exercises that I will give to everyone who has MS, whether you are still running marathons or if you spend most of your day in a wheelchair or anyone in between. There's specific muscle groups that MS attacks. And so, regardless of where you're at in your MS journey, they're going to be helpful. And those are the exercises that are in the missing link. So, just keep that in mind as well. And then last question that I see for right now, Carol, can't seem to gain my strength back in my left hand and arm. So you may know this about me if you've been following me for a while, but if this is your first introduction to me, then you'll hear this for the first time right now. I'm a huge fan, based on research, of functional exercise. So Carol is saying, I can't seem to gain enough strength back in my left hand and arm. And you could do things like ball squeezes and bicep curls, maybe tricep extensions. Those are all great for strengthening, but they're not functional. So my question to Carol would be, well, what is it that you have a hard time doing? Do you have a hard time lifting your hand over your head? If so, a functional exercise would mean practice lifting your arm overhead. And if you don't have this range of motion in your shoulder yet, that's okay. What about here? If yes, what about here? Or is it with grabbing things? Do you keep dropping things? If so, practice grabbing a water bottle, squeeze and release, squeeze and release. So you're practicing those exact movements with your hand and arm that are hard for you to do. All right, so those are the questions that we went through. That I'm just double checking. Those are the questions that came in. I'm just going to see if there's any further questions. Karen says hello from Michigan. Barbara, hi from New York. Marcia says hello as well. Marcia says my feet feel like they're on fire when I get in bed. Yeah, so Marcia, that might be potentially from the position that you're in. Perhaps you're putting a lot of weight on your glutes or your piriformis, so the nerves are getting pinched, and then that nerve makes that sensation travel down its pathway to your feet. So it could be positional, or it could be from lack of movement. So you can maybe try to wiggle your toes. It's so hard to say because everyone's different, but I hope that talk we had earlier was helpful about sensation. Let's see, Sue says that is great on the chair squat. I'm glad you like that. Karen says, top hamstring exercise, is it leg curls? The best hamstring exercise is different. Again, I hate saying this answer because it feels so wishy-washy, but it's different for everyone. Some people, it's great to do a hamstring exercise like a leg curl or hamstring curl on the floor, on your back, or on your side, or seated in a chair or standing, and they all have different reasons. So, but I do agree. So you had said, is it leg curls? To isolate your hamstrings, yes, doing something where you're bending your knee is going to be a very effective exercise. Why do you think MS people get weak hamstrings so much? So I'm not sure why MS tends to attack specific muscle groups more than others. So I don't have an answer of why I think that happens, but the hamstrings are a very important muscle group, as well as the hip flexors, for walking. So if there is any amount of weakness, you are going to notice that in your walking. So it's definitely one of those muscle groups where you need flexibility as well as strength, similar to the hip flexors, the knee extensors, the ankle dorsiflexors. There's a few muscle groups in there that you just need a decent amount of strength in. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, if you don't have strength in those areas, which is very likely, it's okay. You can actually, one, overcompensate with other muscle groups that are stronger as long as it doesn't cause pain, or two, you can strengthen enough. And what I mean by that is you don't need full knee bending in order to walk well, or full hip flexion in order to walk well. If you have a little bit of hip flexion combined with a little bit of knee bending, combined with a little bit of lifting your ankle up, you're going to be able to clear the ground and walk forward without swinging your leg out to the side, or hip hiking where you hike your hip up. So you don't need full strength. And it is important to practice the exercises because we want your brain to find that neural pathway or neuroplasticity. So if you can either train your brain to find a new pathway or strengthen the pathway that's already there through exercise. All right, and Peggy says, hi, Dr. Gretchen, and thank you. All right, so those are all the questions. If you guys like this Q&A, let me know. I am more than happy to do more. If you are interested in learning those MS-specific exercises, you can always feel free to check out my website, missinglink.com, spelled MSING link, or just shoot me an email with any questions that you have to see if it would be a good fit for you or not. So I hope you find that helpful, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.